Welcome to Stellaris. If you have just picked up the game and you have no idea what on earth is going on, then this is a great place to start. My name is ASpec, and today we're going to be walking through the game and basically lay out some of the basic mechanics and the systems that are within the game itself. Now, it could be that you've just picked this one up on a store somewhere, you have just gotten it on a sale, a friend sent it to you, or maybe it is a free-to-play week. But it doesn't mean that you can't learn, because learning is fun. And you may have just stumbled upon one of the best game experiences in space that is available. Now, before we start, I want to make one thing very, very clear. We will not be playing with any DLC enabled for this particular session. This is a completely vanilla experience. We'll be doing a separate, more specific DLC-orientated video in the future. We're going to be talking about the basics, as I've already mentioned, and it doesn't get more basic than the default empires. Now, once you start a new game, it can be very, very attractive to scroll all the way up and create a new empire. I do not recommend this. The creating new empire screen can be incredibly overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of different modifiers, types of species, etc. that you can add. And specifically, the governance and ethics system can be very overwhelming due to the crazy amount of impact it can have. Therefore, in this particular session, we are going to scroll all the way down and go for some of the prefab species. Now, there is a bunch of them that you can play around with, but I highly recommend starting off with the United Nations of Earth. It is very standard, it is very sci-fi, it is a future version of Earth, and it has all the ideas that you would expect from an idyllic version of our homeworld. If you want to get a little bit spicier, you can always play around with the Commonwealth of Man, which is a more authoritarian, militaristic approach to things. But for this particular case, we're going to go ahead and play with this particular setup. There's a bunch of modifiers on your screen. You do not need to worry about this sort of stuff as of right now. We will learn throughout the gameplay to understand what these things are and what they mean and how they impact your game. You don't need to know all of this in order to have fun. But it's easy to go over the basics. And remember, before we dive in, there is no wrong way of playing this game. You will lose sooner or later. This is just part of the flow and ebb of things. So let's dive right in. Let's select and just hit play. It doesn't matter. The galaxy size, galaxy shape doesn't necessarily matter. I would recommend turning the advanced AI empires to off, because you may run into some empires that are stronger than you and will most likely try to murder you straight up or turn you into your prisoner with a job. But yeah, that's the only thing you really need to do, and that is effectively it. Let's hit the play button and get underway in our very first game of Stellaris. Now, as we land, we are given this screen. It has a little bit of fluff on the screen saying what our origin is. The origin itself, it doesn't really matter. It just gives us a bunch of additional bonuses. And once you feel comfortable with the game, you can start exploring different origins. But yeah, there is a bunch of stuff here, a little bit of fluff. It's not really all that impactful to the game. It's just to fill your history and what you have done. Very nice if you want to go for a role play approach to the game. And there is nothing wrong with that. Some people like to min-max, some people like to roleplay. I'm a little bit in the middle of those. So let's just hit the begin button and not start the game, because we are not going to unpause. This is a grand strategy, pausable real-time strategy game. And what I mean by pausable real-time is that in the top right of the screen, there is a date. Now, every single date is set by a day. Now, every single tick of a day, stuff will happen. At the end of the month, we will get resources, for instance, that we'll be talking about shortly, but we can unpause it any moment we like by clicking the top right, or if you are playing on PC, hitting the space bar. So, for instance, if I hit the space bar, we go to normal speed, I hit it again, it goes off. It's extremely straightforward. Now, there is a lot of information thrown at you right off the get-go. We have this outliner over here. We've got all of this stuff on the left side. We've got all of this stuff on the top of the screen. We've got a solar system with a whole slew of things, and it may not be very straightforward on what is what. Because you've tried the tutorial, most likely. Some of you may have not. Don't worry, I got you. And you may have gotten really confused because there is so much stuff going on and it's not necessarily straightforward on what you need to do. So, start of the game. What do you do? Well, first of all, you need to take a look at the resources that you have on the top of the screen. This is your lifeblood. These are the resources that you're going to be using within the game, and they are differentiated in 5 particularly core items that you're going to be playing around with. There's energy, which is basically your money, or you're also going to be spending it on some other things in terms of upkeep. Some species use energy in different ways, but that's not something that we're going to be talking about in this video because it's a little bit more advanced. Minerals are used to build buildings within the game or spend on special projects that you can use to grow your empire. It's very much an infrastructural based resource. Then there is food. I don't think food necessarily needs a very big introduction. Your pops, that's your population, eat this in order to stay alive or grow. The more of it you have, the better. Then there are the more advanced resources. There's consumer goods. These are things like microwaves and dishwashers and basically things to keep your population happy on a day-to-day basis. Every single pop within your empire will be consuming a certain amount of consumer goods, and you'll always have to make sure that this is in the plus, because if they don't, your pops will become unhappy and that will have knock-on effects in the rest of the game. Then there is alloys. Alloys are used to build your space infrastructure. Alloys is what you build your ships with. Alloys is what you expand with by building new stations. Basically, territory indicators that we will go over a little bit later. Then finally, there is influence. Influence is a more, I want to say, esoteric type of item. It doesn't really have a physical standard within the world. This is how you can use your influence that you slowly build up over time to make decisions within your empire. You can do things to improve your influence income or retroactively have a negative impact on said influence growth. You always want to keep this in the plus because once again, you use this to grow your empire and your standing within the universe. And finally, there is unity. Unity is once again, similar to influence, a kind of not necessarily a physical thing, but it's what you use to move your society forward, to develop your own species in something unique and something that you can play with and basically steer into the direction that you want to go with. And we'll get to those a little bit more later on. Then there's a whole bunch of stuff here on the right that is not necessarily impactful right now. They're more indicators of what is available. We'll quickly go over them. There's our science income. Science is objectively the most important resource in the game because science means technology and technology is life. If you can get ahead of everybody else with technology, you are golden. Then there is the strategic resources. We don't need to go into those right now because in the scope of this basics video, we will not have to touch on those whatsoever. But just to give a little bit of clarification, these are special resources that you will have to use on special buildings down the line. And you can also use them to build special components on your ship or on special buildings, etc. Empire Sprawl could be impactful depending on how far we go in this particular video, but it really depends on how things go. Basically, your empire has a certain administrative capacity. You need to have enough pencil pushers in order to keep everything running, and if you go over the number of pencil pushers, in this particular case we have 52 of them, then we will run into some problems in terms of negative modifiers. Finally, there's some envoys, don't need to worry about that, and empire population, don't need to worry about that either. The amount of star bases that we have, don't worry about it, and naval capacity, the amount of ships we currently have in space, and the amount of ships that we can support. Good. We've covered the top bar in the game. Now let's move on to some of the more interesting stuff, because you're probably very interested into the game itself and start going. So, we got our first area over here. This is our solar system. We got our capital world over here. It's Earth. Of course, it is Earth. It is nicely textured. It even has all the continents on it. Even Luna is here. And if we click on the planet, it will bring up a brand new menu, which is the planetary menu, basically. This is where all of our stuff that goes on planet goes on. Rather than clicking on the planet, however, we can also click on the outliner and hit Earth to go to the same menu. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on this screen, and you may necessarily know what is going on. All you need to know here is that you don't need to worry about this at the start of the game whatsoever. These are just the place where your people live and work. Now, the people themselves are listed under the population tab. This is where all your pops hang out and what they all do. You don't need to worry about that. We'll leave that one for the economy video. But closing that screen and ignoring the shipyard, ignoring a military fleet, we get to the science ship. Now, the science ship is very much the proverbial cow that pulls the plow that is your initial empire. So what you do with the science ship, as you may already imply, is you will go out into the wild yonder to explore, because Stellaris is all about exploration and finding yourself within the galaxy and seeing what is out there. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. Exploration is very much the very first thing that you're going to be doing in the game. Now, we're going to go either hit this button down here or hit M. In my particular case, I will hit M, and we will find ourselves on the galaxy map. Now, we can zoom out and we'll see that there are a bunch of systems within the galaxy that we cannot access yet because it's way too early in the game and our ships are not that fast. But we have a nice point-to-point system where we can go and send our science ship all around. Now, it's important to know that our normal ships, as in our fleets, cannot move to systems that we do not know anything about. We can move them to, say, these systems where we have the name of the system, etc. And we can do all of that, but it is just not important. We do not need to move our military ships anywhere whatsoever, because as of right now, they are not important. Quickly looping back to the science ship, however, we can go ahead and say, look, there is a planet nearby. It is an alpine world, which means it's a type of planet that may or may not be interesting to us. And we're just going to go ahead and right-click on that particular system and then survey the system. This will start up a queue of items within that system. And if we quickly go into it, we'll see that there's all these lines. This is the route that our science ship will take in order to survey this system to see if there's anything interesting there, whether it be resources, whether it be science, whether it be ancient anomalies that may or may not have some sort of mystery behind it. Because once again, we are in it for the discovery side of things. In addition to that, we can also at the same time hit the shift key and then click on this button down here, the survey button, click again, and then whilst holding the shift key, continue clicking on systems nearby for us to survey. This sets up a longer queue for us to not having to worry about the science ship. They'll go out into the wild yonder and basically continue doing their thing whilst we do other things within our empire. There's a reasonable amount of automation within the game that allows you to set up queues for different type of things, whether it be ships, whether it be building structures, etc. And that is incredibly useful because you will have a lot of things to do, and having all this stuff automated is an absolute lifesaver. Now that we've got our science ship set up, it's time to take a look at our own solar system. Now, as you see within our solar system, there are a couple of worlds that have these little green icons on them. That means that there is already a station, a science station, or a mining station in orbit. And that basically means that these resources are already being mined by these particular types of stations. Now, what we can do here is actually set up a construction ship and take a look at some of these other places and potentially put down another station. You don't necessarily have to do this at the start of the game, depending on how much income and resources you have, but overall it is a good idea to get a large amount of these resources at the start of the game. You always want to go for the highest possible number, and if you can, do individual constructions on some of these. But for now, we will forego that, and then we'll leave the civilian ships behind us, the construction ship and the science ship, and take a look at the galactic market, or specifically the resources that we talked about earlier. If you click on one of these resources, whether or not be energy, minerals, or food, it'll open up the market screen. The first thing you're going to be doing is sell off all your food. Very straightforward. You hit the -100 button for the food, and you will see that we have a reasonable amount of energy coming in. With that energy, we can hire another scientist for another science ship, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. So we're going to go into our shipyard, go to the shipyard tab here, and build ourselves a science ship for 100 alloys. Don't you worry, it's currently now sitting at 0 alloys. It's not the end of the world. We will get more alloys over time as things progress. But yeah, that is that. We have a science ship queued up. We can recruit a new scientist. Now it's time to take a look at our research. Now research, if we click one of these buttons up here, they are defined in physics, sociology, and engineering, brings up us to this particular screen where we can basically select what kind of science we want to be working on. In general, as a rule of thumb, it's usually a good idea to go for any sort of bonus to scientists or researchers, especially if you don't have any better options available. Basically, this will have a knock-on effect into the late game and will make sure that resources and science in general are cheaper over time, and it's usually a good idea to take these. Similar for our society research, we're going to go for another one of these, and then finally we got our engineering research, but we also have the option to go for powered exoskeletons, which could potentially be helpful because we're going to get more minerals, which basically means we could get cheaper buildings over time because we're going to generate more minerals. The buildings themselves are not going to be cheaper, but they're going to be easier to get due to the amount of materials that we have available. However, because I am a dirty min-maxer, and this is, of course, not something that you have to do yourself, I'm going to go for nanomechanics because I like it when all of these three pictures are basically the same, and I like long-term gains on bonuses. Now, the one thing you need to keep your eye on this particular screen is that this button, this little icon over here, if it's the same as this one, i.e. the bonus that the scientist gives, because yes, the scientists themselves have specializations that they can use to get science, they will get a bigger bonus out of things. For instance, this is a computing expert, which means that if they're researching anything around computing, they will get a bonus of 17% out of it. However, if we change this, by using the change research button and we go to something else, say this one, fusion power, which is under the particle physics tree, we will see that we get a much smaller bonus. So actually trying to get the right scientist into the right science category is usually a good idea. However, at the start of the game, you will simply not have the energy to do anything with that. However, we see that there is an industry scientist down here that we're missing, and instead we're getting a resilient scientist. So we're going to click on their portrait and go to recruit. Now, overall, we have a couple of decent options here. One of them is an expertise in propulsion, which could be useful, and it fits the engineering category. So we're going to go ahead and recruit that particular scientist. Go back to our science screen, and as you can see, the colors, they are now matching. It may not be a rocketry scientist that we're currently getting. We actually cannot get a rocketry scientist specialization at all, but it doesn't matter as long as this is in the right category, and maybe down the line we'll get a bonus on anything involving propulsion systems, and that's usually things like spaceships or thrusters and that sort of things. But we're going to go and leave this alone because once again it's an automated system and it will keep on clocking whilst we are doing our other stuff. And with that, we are almost ready to unpause the game. But we're not going to do that just yet because there is one thing that we're going to be doing first, and this may sound incredibly counterproductive. And I want you to pay attention because this is a bit more of an advanced thing, but it's always a good idea to have the right habits at the start of your game career. Cool? Cool. Now, I want to give one preface on this one. You do not need to do this, the thing that we're about to do. You don't need to do it. but if you want to have a lot of resources at the start of the game, this would be a good idea. So, remember how we were talking earlier that we weren't going to be talking about our military fleet, specifically our 3 little corvettes that are hanging out around here? Well, we are going to be doing something with them. We're going to strip them of all of their weapons, propulsion systems, and anything that makes them useful. Because overall, at the start of the game, there is no use for military fleets. There are some very niche situations where military fleets are important, but 99% of the time, those will not occur. Now, once again, you don't need to do this. However, there's this little button over here. We'll actually unlock the navigation bar, and we will actually lock it over here. Actually, we can't do that. That's a new thing in 3.1. And as you can see, there is this big old ship designer tab. And we can also hit F9 to get to that particular menu, and that's exactly what we will do. We'll get to the ship designer, and it's very sparse. There's a nice star field over here, and there's 3 ships designs here. It's 2 actually. Now we're gonna go ahead and remove the auto generate ship design here because we don't want to do that. Once again, if you're uncomfortable with ships designs and all that stuff, it's a bit more complicated. We'll leave this one for a separate video, then leave that one on. But in the meantime, we're gonna go ahead and clear this design, go into the hyperdrive, and then remove that as well. As you can see, we have basically now stripped this ship of all of its weapons, all of its armor, all of its shields, as well as its ability to traverse to other systems. We're going to go ahead and save this design, and then we are going to go to our ships and hit this tiny button over here. It's the upgrade fleet button. Now, considering we have just set the design of our fleet to something that is significantly more simplistic, we're effectively mothballing our fleet, we will get back about 145 alloys, one of the intermediate resources that we talked about earlier. And we're going to go ahead and upgrade that, or in this particular case, downgrade. And now we will hit the spacebar for the very first time in order to start the game in motion. As you can see at the moment, the ships are now being downgraded slowly but steadily. There's a nice little indicator here that will pop up very shortly, as well as our assigned ship being on its way. Now, you may have noticed the month just ticked over, and that means that we have new resources available. We have got plus 31 minerals, we got plus 58 energy, we got 24 food because we were at 0 before, because we sold all of it, of course. And that is a good thing because we want to have all these resources to slowly but steadily trickle into our economy, because that is what our empire is built upon. So, what is currently going on here? Well, our assigned ship is on its way to our neighboring solar system, and things are going a little bit slow. It's not necessarily the speediest of experiences in the universe, and yeah, it's just moving around. It's going around to this other place and trying to figure out what is going on over here, and that is fine. Yeah, it's a little bit slow. It's not really doing anything. How can we speed up this process? Well, you may have, if you remember, we built another science ship earlier on, and it's just finished. We're going to go ahead and select the science ship that is there. We're going to go to assign leader, and remember that scientist from before that we quickly booted off of their tenure as a scientician within the research department. We're going to go and put that scientist on that ship, and is now equipped. That ship is now equipped with a scientist. We're going to go back to the galaxy map, hit the survey button again, and then once again queue up a bunch of these science operations. And now this particular science ship will also go out there, and I've put it on exactly the same route as this other ship, which means that it will start helping out the initial ship in order to figure out things quicker for us. Now we can move things even further along by hitting the plus button. This will increase the speed of our game. And we'll get to this one shortly. This will increase the speed of our game and basically will make the months and days tick over faster, and also make things a lot more interesting in terms of speed. Because if you play the game at normal speed, sure, you'll have all the time in the world to completely min-max and completely define your situation on your planet. But right now, that doesn't matter. We're here to have fun. We want to go ahead and see what the game actually does. And as it is right now, we've moved the game ahead by about 8 months. we got our first discovery of alien life. Now, the one important thing about this game is that the galaxy is filled with mystery and wonders, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you in this particular series. There is other videos on my channel to go and check those out. If you do, make sure you go and subscribe for more of them in the future. But we've got our first particular little thing over here, and we've discovered alien life. For the first time in existence, our species has found alien life, and a very, very exciting endeavor. We get a bunch of research for this. This is just a single boost of research that we will get. It's not a permanent boost. As you can see, we only have plus 21. We don't get plus 253 on the tally. This is just a lump sum that we would get here. So that's about half a year's worth of science that we get for free, which will automatically get tallied into our society over here. So yeah, there you go. It now goes down to 40 months instead of the 70 months that it was before. In addition, our other science ship has found themselves exotic gas. Now remember those strategic resources I was talking about before? Yeah, we just found a source of them. We can't do anything with them just yet because that's what the science is for, but that is a good thing because it means that our science ships have found something for us that we can use in the late game. Well, not so much the late game, but the mid game. You will be bombarded with different events, different anomalies. With a bit of luck, we might actually come in contact with one of these anomalies at some point. First contact protocols, don't worry about this. It's always wise to be cautious. But yeah, as the science ships are moving back and forth, they can go ahead and find things out. And those are really the initial basics of the game. You may have noticed that I haven't talked about this stuff on the left side of the screen. It does not matter right now. It's okay. We don't need to worry about that. There's maybe one thing, and that's a situation log. But all of this other stuff, it's just not important. It's good to discover all this stuff on your own because there's just so many things going on here that I cannot explain to you. However, I will do so in a future video because we have just discovered the first league, which is a precursor species, and this video is now almost running 30 minutes long. If you have enjoyed this particular introduction into Stellaris, these first few months of in-game time, what to do, how to set up your science ships, how to do your initial surveying, how to make sense of the UI and things that are going on, well, you're in a good place. Take my hand. Let's go and out there and discover more about the galaxy. Feel free to subscribe when more videos drop. We've done these videos many times before, and Stellaris is always evolving into something new and fresh. And now would be a good time to come on board and find the first star in the left and go straight till morning. My name has been ASpec. Thank you for joining me. This has been the Basic on Stellaris. Until next time, take good care of yourselves. Thank you to my patrons. And until next time, take good care of yourselves. And as always, each other.